All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur and Kasparian with you guys on a mediocre Monday afternoon. So, look, there's a lot of stories to get to. Number one, obviously, my haircut.
Story number one, breaking news.
That's right. Look, we cover the news. That's what we do. And the country is abuzz about it, I hear. Is it true that I look like I'm on an Italian soccer team now? I guess.
Oh, God, Cenk.
I guess.
You're so ridiculous. Like, you're the most ridiculous person ever. I can't believe you tweeted about it right before we went live.
Well, people wanted to know. They wanted to know. I was hearing from across the country, hey, Cenk, what happened with the haircut this weekend?
Everyone wanted.
Yes, it was my wife, and I think she did do a pretty good job. It's a little bit thinner than usual. But we're hanging in there. Okay. Now, you're also wondering if you come to my one shot. Well, Cenk, your shirt seems to say progressives versus, but who is it versus? Everybody wants to know. Well, it's progressives versus everybody. Okay. And so that's at shoptyt.com. I mean, what are you doing? You need new clothes. You haven't bought clothes in a month. Let's get real. Okay. Shoptyt.com. All right. Now, lastly, before we get on to theoretically the real news. We need to keep Young Turks healthy. That's no joke. If you can, and only if you can, tyt.com/go. Let's check our thermometer, see how our temperature is doing. Trying to raise $200,000 this month until all of a sudden $68,721.
Damn, it's getting hot in here. So better take off all your clothes.
Don't do that. Whatever you do, don't do that. In fact, the only reason I don't have a jacket on because I do my live videos on YouTube without a jacket. That's my weird distinction in the show generally with a jacket is because it's coronavirus. So my wife is using our bedroom to do therapy sessions through Skype. So I can't access the jackets, and that's life. All right. So old school's tomorrow. We got a lot of shows for you, including this one. For God's sake, let's do it.
Let's do it.
But hydroxychloroquine, try it if you'd like. The other thing, if you have a heart condition, I understand, probably you stay away from the Z-Pack. But that's an antibiotic. It can clean out the lungs. The lungs are a point of attack for this horrible virus.
That was Donald Trump over the weekend, making us question the health of his own lungs, considering the breathy nature of that statement. He was further pushing the idea that hydroxychloroquine would be a safe and effective treatment for COVID-19, even though there is a lack of scientific data to back up his claims. And this is really damaging misinformation that he continues to spread. And luckily, there are some health experts who are trying to correct the record and let the public know about what's going on, namely Dr. Anthony Fauci. We're going to go to him in just a second. But Cenk, thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I got thoughts. First of all, I couldn't agree more with the breathy delivery. Like, does he have like a side hustle of reading like the world's worst erotic novels? And then they went on a romantic interlude.
Try it.
To Norway. That's where he took her. Okay. Anyway, so in this case, there's sun doesn't smell right. Okay, so he's been pushing this drug way too hard. In the beginning, I thought it was the usual ego. Like, once he said it once, oh, yeah, I'm going to double down and triple down. And then once you find out that it saved one life, I'm going to declare victory and declare myself the smartest person that ever lived. It's a very Trumpian thing to do, so I figured that was it. But now he's pushed it way too many times and way too insistently. Follow the money. There's something going on here.
Right. So I do want to give some details about one of the pharmaceutical companies that actually spent quite a bit of money to get direct access to Trump. And would you look at that? Novartis, which is the pharmaceutical company I'm talking about, does produce this drug that Donald Trump has been touting. But before we get to those details, I do think it's important to hear from Dr. Anthony Fauci because he is forced to give similar statements over and over again because Donald Trump keeps misinforming the public about the effectiveness of this drug over and over again. Let's take a look at the next video.
Is hydrochloroquine preventative against this virus? Yes or no?
You know, as I've said many times, Margaret, the data are really just at best suggestive. There have been cases that show there may be an effect, and there are others to show there's no effect.
So he's very clear about it. And Cenk, like what's incredible is during the press conferences, he does his best to correct whatever Trump is misinforming the public about. But just recently, over the weekend, during one of these COVID-19 pressers, a reporter wanted more clarity on the effectiveness of hydroxychloroquine. And just check out how Trump handled this moment.
Also weigh in on this issue of hydroxychloroquine. What do you think about this, and what is the medical evidence?
That question?
Yeah. Well,
Maybe
15
doctor. 15 times. You don't have to ask.
He's your medical expert, correct?
He's answered that question 15 times.
Dr. Fauci.
It's just what a disaster, really.
So Fauci once said, look, I can't press him down in the middle of a press conference and correct him every time. And as our senior producer, Jerry Jackson, pointed out this morning, that's exactly what Trump just did to Fauci. He stepped up like a bully and was like, no, he's not answering that question. There's something super fishy here. Look, I want to tell folks what the reality is. When you have tests without controls, as are the ones that happen in regards to this drug in China and France, without a control study, it means almost nothing. Now, that doesn't mean that the medicine won't work at the end. We just don't know. All it means is we don't know. If Trump says afterward, let's say that they do it, they have control groups, they do the studies right, and it turns out that it works, then Trump will declare victory. But that won't be true because he had no idea, right? Right now, none of us have any idea if it works. It's possible that it works, but doctors cannot go off of maybe. You guys should start taking it because maybe. And remember, it has very significant potential side effects. So do not take it lightly. Definitely ask your doctor. And whatever you do in a situation like this, don't listen to Trump. I know he has a cult and they won't listen to us and they'll just start like big gulping the thing. But you're going to do it at your own peril. It's two people died taking something that they thought was a drug, wasn't, or one person died, another one, and his wife was extremely sick. But even if you take the drug, and you're preventing it from people who actually need it for other illnesses that it actually does treat.
Yes, including, it's an anti-malaria drug, but it's also something that's used by lupus patients. And so lupus patients have had an incredibly difficult time filling their prescriptions, and they clearly need this drug to survive. It's the proven drug to keep them alive, right? So on one hand, the misinformation is depriving people who actually need this drug for proven purposes from getting their hands on it. And on the other hand, it's risky in that the FDA has not approved this drug specifically to combat COVID-19. That's another piece of misinformation that you're likely to hear from some of these pressers that Trump does. He keeps saying that the FDA has approved it for COVID-19. That is not the case. But I do want to go back to Novartis, which is the pharmaceutical company, at least one of the pharmaceutical companies that produces hydroxychloroquine. And we found that, and by the way, this is based on Michael Cohen's own testimony, that the executives over at Novartis wanted to have a direct line of contact with Donald Trump. So back in 2017, they actually contributed quite a bit of money to Trump. According to Law and Crime, one of the largest manufacturers of the drug, Novartis previously paid Trump's now incarcerated former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, more than $1 million for healthcare policy insight following Trump's election in 2016. The Swiss drug maker signed a contract that paid Cohen's newly formed limited liability corporation, Essential Consultants, $100,000 per month in February of 2017. After details of the deal were leaked, the company's CEO issued an apology saying Novartis, quote, made a mistake in contracting with the president's personal attorney. And then update to Novartis's actions, they apparently agreed to donate up to 130 million doses of this unproven drug to help fight COVID-19. So, I mean, look, it's being represented as a donation. I'm very curious whether any journalist with the resources is going to do an investigation into this, because something seems incredibly fishy. Why is it that Donald Trump is so gung-ho about promoting this drug for a purpose that it hasn't been proven for yet?
And by the way, it's not just that he's doing hype for it and marketing for it on almost a daily basis, not just going beyond what the doctors and scientists are saying about it, but the government is also ordering a ton of it. So he has the direct ability to purchase this drug. So in a sense. So look, here are the things that are clear. Novartis didn't pay $1 million to Trump's attorney because they needed his healthcare advice. They were willing to pay $1 million to get a meeting with Donald Trump. Now, what does that mean? That means they had a very specific ask in mind, and that ask was going to make them a lot more than $1 million, a lot more. So that's why, like, on an off chance that his lawyer could hook them up, they threw away $1 million to get a meeting. So whatever Novartis wanted of Trump, it was a significant request. Did they eventually have the meeting with Trump? Did they eventually figure out that bribery in America is actually legal if you do it the right way and you just give him a campaign donation, then he'll give you whatever you want? I don't know. You'll have to look into that and see what kind of donations that Novartis has made to super PACs, et cetera. But this is what we need good reporters from. Instead of reporters that just sit around bashing Bernie Sanders all day, why don't you actually work for a living and find out if, if there's a connection between Novartis and Trump, if they ever had a meeting, if Novartis ever asked for anything publicly, privately, et cetera, because the amount of times that Trump is hyping them is out of this earth. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And he's literally, you saw it right there with your own eyes, suppressing his own doctor and his own doctor as in the doctor that he trusts to give him advice about coronavirus for the public. Putting and literally muzzles him, won't let him talk, and comes out and says, no, you got to try this thing. And he once hyped it up on Twitter as one of like the greatest things that might have ever happened in the history of medicine. Man, this sounds like a Trump project.
Well, I do want to move on to one other angle to this story. So I'm going to reset for this next video, Brett. So during Donald Trump's presser on COVID-19 over the weekend, he was encouraging people to try hydroxychloroquine, even though there is very little scientific data indicating that it would actually be an effective way or a safe way in treating coronavirus. And one of the things that he said was, well, you have nothing to lose. Well, Dr. Patrice Harris was being interviewed and was asked about Trump's statements, and she actually mentions there's quite a bit to lose. She's the president of the American Medical Association. Watch.
So when the president says, what do you have to lose? You got coronavirus, you're in the hospital. What do you have to lose? What do you say?
You could lose your life. It's unproven. And so certainly there are some limited studies, as Dr. Fauci said. But at this point, we just don't have the data to suggest that we should be using this medication for COVID-19.
So that is the view of actual medical experts who are concerned about people who might take this drug because they've been encouraged to by Donald Trump, who is not a medical expert. He also doubled down on a lie that he's told before during these pressers. He said, quote, as you know, they've approved it, meaning the FDA. They gave it rapid approval. Well, the truth is the FDA merely issued a limited emergency use authorization to distribute the drug from the national stockpile and explicitly stated that, quote, chloroquine phosphate and hydroxychloroquine sulfate are not FDA approved for treatment of COVID-19. Like, the FDA has to come out and correct Donald Trump's lies. It's incredible.
Okay, so first of all, a president telling you that a drug is FDA approved when it is not in the middle of a pandemic is potentially criminal negligence. That it's unbelievable that the president would say that. And if any other president had done it, everybody'd be flipping out, because every other president is not mental and doesn't make 1,000 mistakes, say 1,000 lies, and do 1,000 outrageous things every single day. But this is among them. Do not say a drug is FDA approved when it is not, because then people will take it and there could be consequences. So what are the potential consequences? So let me read from Dr. Megan Rennie's explanation of potential side effects. Doesn't mean that everybody who takes the drug is going to get these side effects, but this is a possibility for some people. That's why you should be careful. So here they are. This medication has major side effects, including paranoia, hallucinations, suicidal thoughts, suppression of your blood counts so that you become more susceptible to infections. It can cause severe cardiac arrhythmias. Sorry, I'm pronouncing that wrong, I'm sure. That can even cause death. They are not common side effects, but they are common enough that this should not be taken willy-nilly. It's not like water. It is not harmless, and it may have major side effects. So this is real. You don't go around taking very significant medicine that is not prescribed by your doctor or approved by the FDA. Do not listen to the con man in charge. He usually has some ulterior motive, and he most certainly does not know what he's talking about.
Well, if you thought it would be weird to receive medical advice from a failed businessman like Donald Trump, wait till you come back from our break when we talk about his trade advisor giving us some medical advice when it comes to treating COVID-19. We have that story and more for you when we return.
All right, back at the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys, but all of you guys with us, because you are the Young Turks. That gives me, let's talk about Brett, okay? I don't mean Brett Ehrlich, but I mean Brett, who just participated in tyt.com/go. So he's a viewer, and he told us how he got involved. But first, let me tell you, he gave $300, so he's awesome. Love him. Thank you, Brett. He says that I should actually thank his wife, Heather, who started watching the Young Turks while helping on the 2016 Bernie campaign and got him hooked on it. I love his story because he said, I started watching YouTube videos first, but he made a big point about saying that does not do justice to the show. The show is so much more fun when you watch it live. He says even the breaks are fun and give you background on the host and the people that work at TYT. And he says, now I think that I could give you a paragraph about every single on-air personality of TYT, etc. He's like, look, it's the TYT family, and I love it. So he chipped in $300, which is significant. So Brett, Heather, we love you guys. Thanks for doing that. If you can, and only if you can, tyt.com/go, because we're hurt, dog. Don't ask us if we're all right. Yes, no question. The coronavirus situation has hurt our already fairly precarious situation here, and we're definitely trying to make sure that we stay on for you guys. So tyt.com/go. All right, thank you, Brett. Real quick, there's a lot of wonderful, interesting things that people wrote in, but I want to read at least two that are references to what is going on right now in different parts of the country. So YouTube Super Chat, Debbie the Bernie Bro says, lupus patient, I'm on it, and I can't get my prescription filled because they don't have enough. So it's devastating already because Trump is hyping this one medicine up that is not necessary, that is not even approved for treating coronavirus. Now real patients are running it. There's a second story about that, but real quick, Dylan C. Diggle also used YouTube Super Chat to say, here today, see Cenk's reasoning behind embracing #dropoutBernie. I just got done calling all Sanders offices to encourage him to stay in and warn offices asking to endorse because I fear Joe will lose. Okay, I'm not in favor of dropout Bernie. Look, my tweets are hard to contain ideas in quick ways. So let's go to the post game, and I'll tell you what my real opinion is and my real views. It's important. So the post game is the last half hour here, which you'll get obviously in about an hour. So that's tyt. Or you'll start to get it in half an hour. Anyway, tyt.com/join to become a member to get the post game where I can tell you all about that. And the last one is from Twitter. And I just want to give you guys voice here because Not that. Donald writes in, I have lupus, and brand name Plaquenil has serious side effects, including permanent vision damage, dizziness, and gastrointestinal issues, and suicidal thoughts, and EKG issues, to name a few. Now, that's his experience. We're not doctors or scientists. Please check with your doctors if you need to take this medicine, and find out if you need to take it. Make sure you talk to your doctor.
All right. Well, we're not done with this story yet. We're going to move on and talk a little bit about Trump's economic advisors trying to play the role of medical experts. So there's an ongoing war within the Trump administration regarding the effectiveness of hydroxychloroquine. It's a drug that lupus patients take. It's a drug that malaria patients take. There isn't a lot of scientific data indicating that it's effective for treating individuals with COVID-19, but Trump keeps claiming that it is effective and that it's supposedly approved by the FDA for use for treatment for COVID-19. That is another lie that Donald Trump is saying. Well, now we're finding that Anthony Fauci has to deal with the likes of Peter Navarro within Trump's administration. Now, if you don't know who Peter Navarro is, just understand that he is not a medical expert. He is not a doctor, but he is Donald Trump's trade advisor. And so apparently he blew up on Anthony Fauci in the Situation Room, according to reporting from CNN. There was a heated disagreement in the Situation Room over the efficacy of the anti-malaria drug hydroxychloroquine, as President Trump's top trade advisor, Peter Navarro, feuded with other officials over the drug's unproven effectiveness to treat coronavirus. In fact, according to CNN's reporting, Navarro lashed out at Dr. Anthony Fauci, one of the advisors who had urged caution about the drug. And apparently Navarro showed up with paperwork indicating that the drug is effective, but the paperwork that he showed up with was not scientific data. And so Fauci basically told him, like, yo, homeboy, like, I like your papers and everything, but it doesn't mean anything because they're not scientific studies. It's not scientific data. We can't speak to the efficacy of this drug to treat coronavirus because of that reason. Now, Navarro was interviewed by John Berman on CNN over the weekend, and things got a little fiery. Let's take a look.
Doctors disagree about things all the time. My qualifications in terms of looking at the science is that I'm a social scientist. I have a PhD, and I understand how to read statistical studies, whether it's in medicine, the law, economics, or whatever.
I'm sorry, that doesn't qualify you to treat patients. You know it doesn't qualify you to treat patients.
John. All I'm asking for you to understand, John, is that right in your city, in the New York health and hospital system, virtually every patient getting COVID is presenting with COVID-19 symptoms is given hydroxy. Now, you talk to Mitch Katz, talk to William Grace, and I simply present that. And I think this is important for your viewers.
Okay.
What?
So I want to congratulate all the folks out there that have a Bachelor of Science, because you're just became scientists.
We're all doctors.
So congrats. Now, look, I'm actually going to defend Navarro a tiny bit before I go back to kicking his ass. So you don't need, to be fair to him, he didn't ask to treat patients. So when John Berman says, because you have a PhD doesn't mean you can treat patients, which, by the way, you might want to tell Whoopi Goldberg about Dr. Jill Biden. Anyway, but just keeping it real, that also happened. But Navarro is saying, look, I can analyze the studies just as well as anyone, and that's true. I can analyze a study. I don't need to be a doctor to analyze the study. Having said that, he apparently did not do a very good job of analyzing the study, because he plops down all these papers on the desk, but the papers aren't scientific studies, so it doesn't matter. It reminds me of the old days when Rush Limbaugh on the radio would just like snap a piece of paper in front of the microphone and say, I have a fax, ladies and gentlemen. I have a fax. Okay. Right. And I don't know what that, like, your mom could have faxed you the menu for, lunch. I don't know what the hell. that would be a weird thing to fax too. But anyway, just because you have papers doesn't mean a goddamn thing. So who's right between Fauci and Navarro on the science? Is this an open question? Of course, Fauci. Clownorama's trying to make Trump happy over here because Trump, for whatever reason, wants to push the drug. Navarro is a hatchet man for Trump. So basically, he was sent in there, it looks like to me, this is my analysis, to try to intimidate Fauci and everyone else in the room. If you don't push what Trump is pushing, I'm going to push you around. He's going to send a thug like me to regulate.
No, I mean, it's ridiculous. And no, Navarro doesn't deserve any type of defense because referencing his education, he's trying to make himself out to be some sort of authoritative figure when it comes to promoting this drug for use that it's not meant for, right? So I think that it's, especially when it comes to life and death situations and when it comes to potentially taking certain drugs for an illness or this particular virus, clarity and consistency is important. And what Navarro is doing is he's helping Donald Trump in muddying the waters when it comes to an incredibly dangerous drug that, again, is not approved for treating COVID-19. Now, I want a good treatment for it more than anyone, just as much as anyone, right? But what we don't want to do is encourage people to use this drug off-label to treat something when there isn't enough scientific data indicating that it could actually treat it without lethal side effects. With that said, though, I do want to go to the next clip because the interview just continued getting pretty fiery.
I mean, when I look at a study, just this latest one, I read it from Wuhan, and there's a control group where 80% do well and only 50% don't. I mean, you could be a plumber and read that and come to the same conclusion, John.
Peter,
I don't know why you're so hard about this.
I'm not.
Would you take it? Would you take it if you got sick?
Would I take it if I got sick?
Would you take it, knowing what you know now?
No, I would listen to my doctor about whether or not I should take it if I got sick. I would consult my doctor. I would not consult someone involved with trade policy. I would not consult with someone with trade policy, Peter.
I agree.
And my question, do you want a doctor? Do you want a medical doctor, an internist? Do you want an internist striking trade deals with Asian countries? Well, no, but that's my point.
But you're setting up a false narrative
here. I'm not. I swear to God, I'm not. You had a debate inside the Situation Room with the nation's top infectious disease doctor, the man who was in charge, to a certain extent, of the nation's medical response to this. And all he said, he wants this to work. Everyone wants this to work. All he has said is, let's let the testing and the science decide. What you seem to be saying is, I've read a study out of Wuhan, and I decided.
That's so unfair, John.
I don't think that it is unfair. I think John Berman actually handled that interview perfectly and had the right pushback to Navarro's misinformation. Yeah.
For the folks who are used to normal news, they'd be like, I don't get it. You guys are really backing John Berman here. And I've heard you guys criticize him before. Yeah, that's because he was wrong before and he's right about this.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how non-biased people work. So no, that was a great follow-up. That was exactly the right question. And Navarro had no good answer other than, oh, boo-hoo, me, you're being unfair. No, he described it exactly as it was. So, look, Navarro is very unlikely to go into that task force meeting, which, by the way, he's not part of the task force. So he got put into that room for whatever reason at some point. And he's unlikely to go in there rogue. My guess is somebody sent him in there to yell at Fauci and others to send a message. Because what the hell's the trade advisor in that room for in the first place? And if he is, it should be regarding trade. And for him to bully the scientists and the doctors in the room, that means very likely he was sent in to bully them. So for God's sake, again, if there's a single good reporter in the country, follow the money. Follow the money. There's something unnaturally fishy about how much Trump and his thugs are hyping this one particular medicine that is not FDA approved, and that is that people should not be taking without consulting with their doctors.
Well, let's move away from drug talk and discuss some of the decisions that Donald Trump has made, because he's made a lot of bad ones, including his refusal to push for a stay-at-home order. So Donald Trump still has not pulled the trigger on a nationwide stay-at-home order, which is incredibly important because still, till this day, there are as many as 9 states that have refused to also do the same, to encourage their citizens to stay home, to shelter in place in order to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Now, Chris Wallace wants to know why. And I give Chris Wallace a lot of credit because he is conservative, but he doesn't hold back from being critical toward the Trump administration. He was critical throughout the Russia investigation. He was critical throughout the impeachment investigation. And he's certainly critical now with Trump's handling of COVID-19. So he had the Surgeon General on to discuss this, Surgeon General Jerome Adams. Let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Dr. Fauci says he believes that there should be a national stay-at-home order. Is he wrong?
Well, Chris, it's important to understand that most people across the country are doing the right thing. Over 90% of the country is staying at home, and a good proportion, more than average, are staying home even in those 9 states. But the last time you and I talked, it was about opioids. People don't know, but I've run a state Department of Health. I've been involved in health for years, and diseases don't respect state lines.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
But we live in a country where we have a system of federalism. And when it comes to opioids, states have different rules and regulations and laws regarding treatment, regarding syringe service programs, as you and I have talked about. I actually put out a report on tobacco cessation earlier this year, and we know that states have different laws there, and more people will die, even in the worst projections, from cigarette smoking in this country than are going to die from coronavirus this year.
That was not a good answer, if you ask me. There are some distinctions among the health professionals and health experts within Trump's COVID-19 task force. I feel like the Surgeon General is more willing to maybe be apologetic for or cover up for Trump's misinformation, for his terrible decisions. But this is not about regulations pertaining to opioid use or opioid treatment. This is about a situation where we're all living in the same country together. This virus spreads rapidly, and we're all in it together. So you can't have some states do the right thing, other states do the wrong thing, which is not encourage their residents to stay at home, and think that this virus is going to be, effectively combated. It's so easy to spread it, and each state isn't an individual island. I mean, I don't understand why anyone would think that argument is legitimate in any way.
Yeah. So it's to me, it seems fairly clear he actually does not agree with the decision, but they're all put in this incredibly awkward and difficult situation where they have to justify Trump's stupid decisions. So he has the authority to do a stay-at-home order, even rhetorically saying it would make a big difference. And that's why Dr. Fauci says that he should say that. Trump should say that, but he won't. So then the Surgeon General has to go out there and go, well, smoking kills more people. That's true, but really has nothing to do with this. We'll get back to that in a second. But there are 9 states now that have not done a stay-at-home order. I don't want you to get the wrong idea. They have different varying degrees of response to this. So a lot of the schools are closed, and they have policies like safer at home, which is like, hey, we really wish you'd stay at home, but we're not telling you it's absolutely necessary. But the ones that drive me crazy are Alabama, South Dakota, and Nebraska, with governors going, this ain't New York. Okay. On the one hand, I understand part of what they're driving at, which is in a rural situation, people are not as compact. On the other hand, there seems to be a stupid swagger to those statements within the context of them saying it that makes it sound like we're tougher than you guys are in New York, which is probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, so I'm going to do just a quick rundown of some of these states and the reasoning that we've heard from the governors. So, for instance, in Arkansas, Governor Asa Hutchinson has repeatedly defended his decision not to issue a stay-at-home order, suggesting that such a measure would cause loss of jobs. Yeah, but what about the loss of lives? I mean, that's what you should be concerned about. I mean, yes, we're all worried about loss of jobs. We're all concerned about the incredibly high unemployment rate right now, but we need to save people's lives. And the best way to, in the long run, improve the economy is to ensure that we combat this virus as quickly as possible. The longer they hold out on doing the right thing, the longer it's going to take for us to, really combat this virus effectively. In Iowa, Governor Kim Reynolds insists that a statewide stay-at-home order is unnecessary. Reynolds has previously suggested that the measure already implemented by the state are equivalent to an informal stay-at-home order. So just as you were referring to, Cenk, some governors don't have like a mandatory shelter-in-place order, but they have some guidelines that indicate that you should stay at home. But really, you need to convey a strong message to your constituents so they understand the severity of the situation, because I don't think it's getting through to a lot of people who live in these states. Same with Nebraska. Governor Pete Ricketts reiterated on Thursday that he does not believe a statewide stay-at-home order is necessary yet. And in Oklahoma, Governor Kevin Stitt has called a statewide stay-at-home order unrealistic, reiterating individual personal responsibility and the need for social distancing. South Carolina, South Dakota, Utah, and Wyoming are also states that have refused to do a statewide stay-at-home order.
Well, this whole thing about like individual responsibility makes it sound like freedom. It isn't about that at all, of course. It's about money, big businesses that donate to politicians. And so the reason they're not doing stay-at-home orders is not because they don't think it's medically necessary or they think that they're striking the right balance. It's because if you do stay at home, all non-essential businesses close, and they don't want those businesses to close. I'd be curious to see how much of how many of the CEOs are going into work themselves. Maybe some of them, maybe all of them, right? But the CEOs are generally in New York and other places, and forcing their workers to go into work in all those states, by the way, all red states, is really the objective here, right? Hey, we got to keep it humming along, so back to the mines.
Yeah, and I want to just quickly comment on employees who are considered essential employees, and they are going to work. Some of these Amazon employees, for instance, one Amazon employee just got fired because he was encouraging the company, pressuring the company to provide protective gear, which they obviously need, right? I mean, these people are freaking heroes, because without them, we wouldn't have access to things that, a lot of people need, food, supplies, while they're forced to stay at home. And the very least that Amazon, an incredibly profitable company, can do is ensure that their employees are safe and that they have the protective gear that they need. But instead, they decided to fire the employee who was basically mobilizing his colleagues to fight back and get something done so they are protected. It's pathetic.
How Trumpian of them. Trump, of course, his administration at least, and it sounds like him, we'll get to the story a little bit later, had Captain Crozier removed from his ship because he told a story of how the guys are sick, then we need to protect the sailors' lives. And so in the Amazon case, you're in an enclosed warehouse. And how is it good for your business anyway? It's short-term greed. If all your workers get sick, and if one of them is sick, there's an excellent chance that they'll all get sick because it's airborne. It's airborne. How does it help your business? It doesn't. It's short-term greed, 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 greed. Same thing with these 9 red states that are not calling for a stay-at-home order. It's short-term greed. But when half your state gets sick, it's not going to help business either.
Exactly. All right. Well, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, though, we'll update you on the Captain Crozier story. There are some pretty big updates to that, and we'll have more for you. We'll be right back.
All right. Back on the Young Turks. Let me read a couple of comments for you guys. Theater Goddess writes in the member section, because of the COVID-19 stimulus, I'll likely be in a position to donate a good amount of money to the GO campaign, and this is an opportunity that I'm not sure I'll have again. Even though you haven't posted any naming rights levels, how much would it cost to get the God Mike in the control room named a Theater Goddess or Goddess Mike for short? So I love that. I don't know the answer. I'll get it to you. But for folks who gave a good amount of money, when we do a donor wall, and in fact,
at TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
Whiteboard just appeared, arrived, and I'm going to start putting up your names there. We will do everything retroactively as well. If we give away T-shirts, we'll give away T-shirts to you guys, naming rights, etc. So don't worry about that. TYT.com/go now, and then we'll do that for the folks who already gave as well. So let's take a look at it real quick to see where we are. We started at about 68,000 earlier today, and now we are at 69,235. Let's keep it going. Let's see if we can get to 70 or more by the end. That would be amazing. Now, a lot of folks wrote in comments like this. Irene says, as a physician, I can tell you that in medicine, Navarro's credentials mean nothing. Yes. Chance writes in, Navarro looks like the Riddler on Adam West's Batman TV shows. Another good point.
God damn it, I love you guys.
I know, totally. Toronto Peter gets in my grill a little bit, as did several folks on Twitter, so I'll summarize all of them with Toronto Peter's comment in the member section. He says, no offense, Cenk, but you cannot understand a clinical study properly. I don't care if you have a PhD or a JD. If it isn't science or medicine, sorry, you won't understand it. I am a scientist. To understand clinical trials or any medical study, you require knowledge of specific vocabulary terms, experimental designs, etc. You nor Peter Navarro has that knowledge.
Listen, I will say, as someone who has a master's of science, I completely agree with you, and I do not know how to decipher scientific studies, and nor will I pretend to be an authoritative figure in that regard. No one should, unless you have actual training and expertise.
Well, I counter with this. So first off, no one understands clinical studies better than I do. Second of all, I do have a JD, which is only one letter off from an MD. Boom.
Have you ever used Esquire in your name?
Not unless I wanted someone to think I was a Let's see. How do I clean this up? A jerk?
No, don't. I'm sure there are some Esquires watching right now. No judgment. Do you, boo? You earned that degree. Okay? You earned it.
I hear you, but if I went and said to somebody, "Hi, Cenk Uygur Esquire," I mean, if Ben was around, I've never seen him punch anyone, but he might punch me. All right. Let's keep going. We got a lot of important stories.
Let's do it.
I thought it was terrible what he did. To write a letter? I mean, this isn't a class on literature. He shouldn't be talking that way in a letter. He could call and ask and suggest.
Trump had absolutely no problem bad-mouthing the Navy captain who was relieved of duty after he sounded the alarm regarding a COVID-19 outbreak on an aircraft carrier that he was in charge of. Now, multiple sailors who were on that ship have tested positive for COVID-19. And it turns out that Navy Captain Brett Crozier, who is the person that Trump was talking about in that clip, unfortunately also tested positive for COVID-19. In fact, the commander began exhibiting symptoms before he was removed from the warship, two of his classmates said. Crozier was fired following a leak to the San Francisco Chronicle of a letter he had emailed to Navy leaders that detailed the failures on the service's part to provide the necessary resources to swiftly move sailors off the carrier and disinfect areas on board as the virus spread through the ship. Now, his concerns were clearly legitimate, but the Trump administration must have been embarrassed by this letter after it was leaked to the San Francisco Chronicle. They were more concerned about their image as opposed to the well-being of sailors on that aircraft carrier. Now, what's also interesting is that the Navy secretary had some pretty strong words about Brett Crozier during a speech that he gave to these sailors. We're going to give you two different snippets of that speech so you get a sense of what he had to say about Crozier, but pay particular attention to how the sailors responded or reacted to what the Navy secretary had to say here.
Immediately it was picked up by the San Francisco Chronicle, which published sensitive information about the material condition of a naval warship. If he didn't think, it was my opinion, that if he didn't think that information was going to get out into the public in this information age that we live in, then he was A, too naive or too stupid to be the commanding officer of a ship like this. What the alternate is that he did it on purpose. And that's a serious violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which you are all familiar with. That message and all the contents in that message was perfectly fine for him to send to people in his chain of command in a confidential way so they could get acting on it.
The reaction from sailors was pretty incredible. And if you can recall, when Crozier was taken off the aircraft carrier, the sailors were chanting his name. It was clear that they had a lot of affection for him.
Yeah. So first of all, throughout the weekend, every once in a while, I'd start chanting, Captain Crozier, Captain Crozier. That was one of my favorite videos of all time. It's the end of Dead Poet Society. Oh, Captain, my Captain. It's literal, right? So now in this case, you see one of the sailors with an F-bomb as the Navy secretary is talking to them about their captain, and they don't want to hear any of that. They love their captain because he was trying to protect their lives. I read the letter that Captain Crozier wrote, and first thing is he made such a devastating point about the situation on the ship, and that's why they're embarrassed. And I'll get to who's at fault in a second. But he said the only study that's ever been done on an enclosed ship is on the Diamond Princess cruise ship that had a lot of the coronavirus outbreak on it. And they explained that they did mitigation on the ship. If they had done immediate mitigation, only 79 people would have gotten sick out of thousands and thousands. But because they couldn't do that, they did do some mitigation because they have individual rooms on the ship. And so they sequestered in that way. And still, 17% of the ship got coronavirus. But the most important part of the study was if they did not do that mitigation, 79% of the people on the ship would have gotten coronavirus. And Captain Crozier explained, guys, in our case, we don't have individual compartments. We all live together. We go to the same restrooms. We have the same cooking this food for everybody. This is the worst case scenario. If we do not do something, we're likely to have 79% of these sailors get coronavirus, and a lot of them die. And he said, if it was in wartime, we'll do what we need to do. We'll obviously carry on sick, etc. But we're not at wartime. So why are we going to lose sailors for no reason at all? Which leads me to who got pissed. It was either the person right above him, all the way up to the Navy Secretary in the chain of command, who was like, I already told you no, have your sailors die. Why are you going above my head? That's possibility number one. That's why on the first day, I wasn't sure that it was Trump who did it. Of course, the second possibility is that it's Trump because it embarrassed him politically. But now we likely have our answer, because when Trump comes out and says, it was a terrible thing he did, terrible. And he says, I didn't make the decision, but I support it. 9 out of 10 times that means he made the decision. When he says, I didn't make the decision, that means almost certainly he did, and he thinks that there's going to be political blowback from it. And now he has all of his thugs online trying to, talk down Captain Crozier as if he's some sort of villain, which is insanity. I don't know how many lives he saved on that ship, but that's why his sailors love him, and he did exactly what a captain's supposed to do.
So Thomas Modly, who's the Navy Secretary, in that clip that we just had you all listen to, basically said that Crozier is either naive or stupid if he thought that that letter wouldn't eventually get leaked. And I just thought that was a fascinating thing to say, because keep in mind that Modly made these statements to these sailors without intending for these statements to be made public in any way. And so is he naive or is he stupid in bad-mouthing the Navy captain who just wanted to save people's lives and ensure that the sailors were safe, ensure that they don't end up dying from an incredibly lethal virus that, by the way, has already claimed the lives of over 10,000 Americans. So Crozier did, look, it might have embarrassed people up the chain of command. It might have embarrassed Trump. But I really do think it's the right thing to do if you think that's your final option, your only option to get something done to protect these sailors. But at the same time, I mean, you have Modly, calling Crozier stupid. What do you think he's stupid for? Because he, did a cost-benefit analysis and understood that maybe embarrassing people means less than protecting the lives of our sailors.
100%. And by the way, it looks like now, coincidentally, one of the lives he saved might have been his own. So maybe the best thing they could have done for him is take him off that ship. But when we have a real president back in charge, give him the ship back.
All right. Well, post-game show is next. We'll see you all later.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.